Good morning. Welcome to today's story, a touching, humane, and educational tale.
At 18, Mara Collins was thrown out of her own house on the coldest night of the winter. With one duffel bag, nowhere to go, and no idea that an abandoned laundromat would become the place that saved her life. This story will show you that losing your home does not mean losing your worth, and that sometimes the smallest overlooked place can teach us about dignity, resilience, community, and the quiet courage it takes to begin again. The front door slammed so hard the porch light shook. Mara stood there for a second, not moving. A thin cloud of white breath drifted from her mouth into the December air. Her fingers were already numb around the strap of the duffel bag her stepmother had tossed out after her. Inside were two pairs of jeans, three shirts, a winter sweater that still smelled faintly like cedar from the upstairs closet, and the old green notebook her father used to keep in the glove box of his truck. That was it. No second bag. No apology. No one calling her back. Through the frosted glass, Mara could still see the shape of her stepmother moving through the hallway, quick and sharp, like she was finishing a chore she had put off too long. She didn't open the door again. She didn't even look back. Mara swallowed hard and stepped off the porch. The gravel crunched under her boots. It was the kind of cold that didn't just sit on your skin. It worked its way in, through your sleeves, under your collar, straight into your chest. The little ranch house behind her had once felt small but safe when her dad was alive. Now it looked like any other house on the block. Warm windows, closed curtains, a place that belonged to somebody else. She pulled her coat tighter and started walking. Belfield was the kind of Midwestern town people used to be proud of. There had been a tire plant once, a machine shop, a rail line that ran freight through town every morning before sunrise. But most of that was gone now. Storefronts downtown sat empty, signs peeled, windows stayed dark. Folks still lived there because leaving took money and staying took less. Mara knew every street by memory. She passed the diner where her father used to order black coffee and pancakes on Sundays after church. She passed the pharmacy with the faded red letters. She passed the bus stop bench where she had sat at 14, knees tucked to her chest, waiting for her dad to pick her up after volleyball practice. Every corner of town seemed to carry some old version of her life. That made the walking worse. She didn't cry at first. She was too cold for that, too stunned, too tired of being talked about like she was a problem that needed clearing out. Her stepmother had said it so calmly it almost hurt more. "You're 18 now, Mara. I've done all I can do." But that wasn't true. She hadn't done all she could do. She had just decided she was finished. By the time Mara reached the older side of downtown, the wind had picked up. It pushed wrappers and dead leaves across the sidewalk and rattled the loose metal signs over shuttered shops. She kept her head down, hands in her pockets, eyes half on the pavement. Then she saw it. Bluebird Wash. The sign was hanging crooked, one corner barely holding on. Half the letters were burned out, so all that glowed under the street lamp was Bird Wa in pale blue paint and rust. The front windows were coated in dust. A flyer for a city council race from 3 years ago still clung to the inside of the glass. Mara stopped. For a long moment, she just stood there staring. Her dad used to bring her here when she was little, back when the washing machines were loud and the soda machine in the corner still worked. She remembered the smell of detergent and warm cotton, the sound of quarters dropping into metal slots, the way people talked in laundromats like they didn't have to impress anybody. Everyone looked a little tired. Everyone was waiting on something. But nobody acted like they were better than anyone else. Her father had loved that. He used to say, "You can tell a lot about a town by the places where regular people go when life gets hard." Mara stepped closer to the glass. Inside, under the dust and darkness, she could still make out the shapes of the machines. Old, silent, forgotten. But still there. A strange feeling moved through her then. Not hope exactly. Hope was too big, too bright for that moment. It was something quieter. A tug, a thought, a stubborn little spark. She had nowhere to sleep. No plan for tomorrow. No one waiting for her. But as she stood there in the freezing dark, looking into that dead laundromat, Mara felt something she had not felt all night. Needed. Not by a person, by a place. And for the first time since the front door slammed behind her, Mara Collins did not feel like she was disappearing. She felt like she had just found the first thing that might still be worth saving. Mara stood on the sidewalk for another minute, staring through the dusty glass of Bluebird Wash as if the place might speak first. It didn't. Street stayed quiet. A pickup rolled past the corner, then disappeared. Somewhere down the block, a loose sign tapped against brick in the wind. Mara shifted her duffel bag higher on her shoulder and walked around to the side of the building. The alley was narrow, half choked with weeds and frozen slush. An old detergent crate lay tipped over near the back wall. The metal door had been chained once, but the lower hinge had pulled loose from the frame years ago. When she pressed gently, the door gave with a long, rusty groan. A sour smell met her first. Old water, mildew, dust. The kind of smell a building gets when nobody has opened a window in too long. Mara stepped inside slowly. Moonlight fell through the high back windows in pale strips, catching on rows of machines lined up like sleeping animals. The floor was littered with lint, paper cups, and broken plastic hangers. One ceiling tile sagged dark with an old leak. A bulletin board near the front still held faded church flyers, coupons, and a handwritten babysitting ad that had curled at the corners. It was a mess, but it wasn't gone. That mattered. Mara set her bag down on a cracked vinyl chair and moved through the laundromat one careful step at a time. She ran her fingers over the tops of the washers, leaving clean streaks through the dust. Most were ancient coin-operated Maytags, built back when things were made heavier, louder, and harder to kill. Her dad used to like machines like that. He always said old things had more fight in them than people realize. She found a broom in the supply closet with half its bristles bent flat. It was enough. So she started sweeping. Not because she had a plan. Not because she believed she could fix the place by morning. Just because doing something felt better than standing still. By sunrise, she had cleared a patch of floor near the back wall, wiped down 2 folding tables, and hauled 3 garbage bags of trash into the alley. Her arms ached. Her nose stung from the cold. She had slept maybe 40 minutes with her coat on and her head against the wall. Around 7, someone knocked on the front glass. Mara froze. A woman stood outside with 2 overstuffed laundry bags and a little girl in a pink puffer coat. The woman looked worn out in the way working mothers often do, hair shoved into a loose bun, hospital scrubs under a winter jacket, eyes carrying more than one kind of exhaustion. Mara walked to the front and pushed the door open. "We're closed," she said automatically, then gave a small, embarrassed shake of her head. "I mean, it's not open yet. I'm just cleaning." The woman looked past her into the room. "For real?" she asked gently. "I thought this place was dead." "So did everybody else," Mara said. The woman let out a tired little laugh. "Well, I was hoping maybe one machine worked. Mine quit 2 months ago, and the laundromat over in Hartwell's 25 minutes away if traffic's kind." She shifted the bags in her hands. "My boys got school. I've got another shift tonight. Sometimes I feel like I spend half my life trying to get clothes clean enough for people not to look down on us." That line stayed with Mara. Not because it was dramatic, because it sounded true. The woman introduced herself as Tessa Reed. The little girl leaning against her leg was Molly. Mara told her the truth, that none of the machines were running yet, that she didn't even know if they could run, that she was mostly guessing her way through the place. Tessa nodded like she understood more than Mara had said out loud. "Well," she said, "guessing still more than what this town usually does for people." After she left, Mara stood in the middle of the laundromat for a long time. It hit her then, sharp and clear. This wasn't just an abandoned building. This was a missing piece of daily life. In a town like Belfield, people could survive without fancy things. They could live without a movie theater, without a bookstore, without a coffee place with exposed brick and little chalkboard menus. But clean clothes, that was different. That was job interviews, school pictures, church on Sunday, a second chance before anyone even heard your side of the story. So Mara picked one washer near the back and decided that if she could bring even one machine back to life, maybe that would be enough to begin. She found the breaker box, checked the water line, dragged over a milk crate, and knelt beside the machine with a screwdriver she found in a drawer under the change counter. An hour later, she shocked herself on a loose wire, tripped the power to half the room, and nearly burst into tears from frustration. "Well," a voice said from behind her, dry as old paper. "That's one way to murder a washer." Mara turned. An older man in a canvas coat stood just inside the back door, hands in his pockets, gray cap pulled low over his brow. He looked at the machine, then at the burned smell in the air, then at her. "You trying to fix it?" he asked, "or send it to heaven?" Mara pushed herself up from the floor and brushed the dust off her jeans. I was aiming for fixed, she said. Heaven was not the plan. The old man gave one slow nod, like she had passed some test she didn't know she was taking. He stepped closer to the machine, crouched with a soft grunt, and pulled a small flashlight from his coat pocket. He didn't ask permission. He just clicked the light on and studied the wiring with the kind of calm that comes from years of knowing exactly what belongs where. You touched the live lead before checking the ground, he said. I know that now. Good means the lesson took. Mara watched him carefully. Up close, he looked weathered in the way old barns and good tools look weathered, worn but still solid. I'm Mara, she said. Eli Turner. The name rang a bell. Her father had mentioned him once or twice, usually when something mechanical refused to behave. Eli tapped the side of the washer with his knuckles. These old Maytags are stubborn, but they're honest. They'll tell you what's wrong if you stop fighting long enough to listen. He showed her the scorched connector, the loose feed line, the brittle belt that had nearly snapped clean through. He didn't do the work for her. He pointed, he explained. Then he made her do it with her own hands. By noon, the machine was back together. Mara wiped her palms on her jeans and looked at Eli. He shrugged. Go on. She turned the knob. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the washer shuddered. The drum gave a low, tired spin. Water coughed through the line. And just like that, the old machine came alive. Mara stared at it, hardly breathing. Eli only grunted, but there was the faintest trace of pride in his face. Well, he said, looks like you didn't kill it after all. Word traveled faster than Mara expected. By late afternoon, Tessa came back with her laundry and a look on her face that said she wasn't sure whether to trust what she was seeing. You got one running? She asked. Just one, Mara said. And it sounds like it has personal issues. Tessa laughed, and the sound warmed the room more than the space heater Eli had dragged in from his garage. That evening, Tessa washed 2 loads while Molly sat at a folding table, drawing hearts on the back of an old grocery receipt. A man in a frayed army jacket stopped in next. Then a grandmother from the south side brought in 3 pillowcases and a church dress sealed in a trash bag to keep it clean. Mara found an old piece of cardboard and wrote in thick black marker, if you can pay, pay. If you can't, wash anyway. She taped it to the wall above the change counter. Nobody said much when they read it, but their faces changed. That was enough. Over the next few days, Bluebird Wash began to breathe again. Not fully, not neatly, but honestly, 2 machines worked, then 3. Eli came by most mornings, pretending he was only there to make sure she didn't burn the block down. Tessa brought coffee one sunrise and a box of powdered donuts the next. Mara swept, scrubbed, tightened hoses, patched leaks, and learned the rhythm of the place. And with every person who walked through that door, she saw the same thing. People weren't just carrying dirty clothes. They were carrying embarrassment, exhaustion, the quiet humiliation of being judged before they ever opened their mouths. One little boy came in wearing a school hoodie with the sleeves pulled over his hands. While his mom loaded a washer, he asked Mara very softly, you think this stain's gonna come out before Monday? Mara looked down at the dried milk and cafeteria grease on the front of his shirt. We'll give it our best shot, she said. He nodded like that answer mattered more than it should have. That night, Officer Ben Hale stepped through the front door with his thumbs hooked near his belt and suspicion written all over his face. We got a call, he said, glancing around the room. Said somebody was operating out of a condemned property. Mara stood straighter. She expected a warning. Maybe worse. But Ben's eyes landed on Molly asleep across 2 plastic chairs, her little coat folded under her head. Then on Tessa sorting scrubs from socks. Then on Eli kneeling beside an open dryer panel. His expression shifted. Just slightly. Not softer, but less certain. Before he could say anything else, the front bell rang again. A young man walked in holding his phone up chest high, already recording. Mara recognized him right away. Dylan Pierce. He had gone to school with her. He smiled like they were still friends. Well, Dylan said, sweeping the camera across the room. Would you look at this? Bellfield's dead laundromat is back from the grave. And for the first time since Bluebird Wash had started to come alive, Mara felt something cold slip in with the winter air. Not fear exactly, something sharper. The sense that once the world noticed what she was building, it might try to take it from her. The kind of people who don't hate the poor, they just want them out of the way. Dylan kept filming like he was doing the room a favor. He turned in a slow circle, catching the washers, the folding tables, the hand-lettered sign above the counter, the people trying very hard not to look at his phone. Man, he said, half laughing, this is actually kind of incredible. Mara didn't answer. She remembered that tone from high school. The one boys like Dylan used when they wanted credit for noticing something after everyone else already had. Put the phone down, Eli said from beside the dryer panel. Dylan flashed him a grin. Relax, sir. This could help her. People love comeback stories. That was the first time Mara understood the danger of being seen. Not all attention was kindness. Some of it was curiosity. Some of it was hunger. And some of it belonged to people who knew how to turn somebody else's hard season into their own opportunity. By the next afternoon, Dylan's video had made its way around Belfield. People stopped by who had never once cared whether Bluebird Wash stood or fell. A few brought quarters. A few brought old detergent bottles from under their sinks. One woman dropped off a box of dryer sheets and cried halfway through, telling Mara how hard it had been to keep her boys looking neat after her husband left. But attention brought other eyes too, sharper eyes. By Monday morning, Mara found an envelope taped to the front door. Notice of violation. The property had been flagged for unauthorized use, unsafe occupancy, plumbing noncompliance, and operation without approved licensing. There would be a hearing. Temporary shutdown was under review. Mara read the page twice. Then a third time. Her hands stayed steady, but only because she forced them to. Tessa came in 5 minutes later, saw Mara's face, and quietly took the paper from her. Oh, honey, she said. Eli muttered something under his breath that definitely wasn't church language. Officer Ben showed up before noon. This time he didn't stand in the doorway like an outsider. He stepped all the way in, took off his gloves, and read the notice for himself. Do you know who filed the push? Mara asked. Ben hesitated. That was answer enough. An hour later, she got the full name, Lorraine Voss. Everybody in Belfield knew who Lorraine was. She chaired redevelopment boards, cut ribbons, smiled for the paper, and spoke in polished sentences about investment, renewal, and progress. She had been buying up old commercial lots on the east side for months, and Bluebird Wash sat right in the middle of what she wanted. That evening, Mara found Lorraine waiting outside in a camel coat and leather gloves, like winter itself had hired a lawyer. I'm sorry about the timing, Lorraine said pleasantly, but this building has been dead a long time. We're trying to bring something useful to this part of town. Mara looked past her at the laundromat windows glowing blue against the dark. There's already something useful here. Lorraine's smile didn't move. A handful of people washing clothes in a failing structure is not a long-term community solution. No, Mara said softly. It's what people do when nobody gives them one. For the first time, Lorraine's expression cooled. You're young, she said. You still think need is the same thing as leverage. It isn't. Then she got in her car and drove away. That should have been the low point. It wasn't. 2 nights later, Eli discovered someone had been inside after closing. One of the rear supply shelves had been knocked over. A hose clamp had been loosened. The drain line behind washer 3 had been cut just enough to split under pressure. Sabotage. Quiet, precise, mean. Mara stood ankle-deep in cold water at nearly midnight, staring at the mess while Tessa held a flashlight and Eli shut off the line. Ben arrived 10 minutes later. He looked at the cut hose, then at the back door, then at Dylan's name on the fresh comments and shares still spreading online. His jaw tightened. Somebody wants this place to fail in a way they can blame on you, he said. Mara pressed both hands against the edge of a washer and lowered her head. For one long moment, nobody spoke. The room smelled like wet concrete, detergent, and something close to heartbreak. Then Tessa set the flashlight down and rolled up her sleeves. What do we do first? She asked. Eli answered without looking up. We save what we can. Ben took off his coat. I'll check the alley cameras from the hardware store across the street. Mara lifted her head. The fear was still there. So was the exhaustion. But underneath both, something steadier had taken root. Bluebird Wash was no longer just a place she had found. It was a place people were choosing. And when people choose something with their whole heart, they do not give it up easy. Outside, the wind scraped against the windows. Inside, in the half-flooded laundromat everybody once called dead, Mara Collins bent down, reached for the ruined hose, and got back to work. By sunrise, Bluebird Wash looked like it had gone through a storm and decided somehow to keep standing. The floor was dry again. Not perfect, not polished, but dry. Eli had replaced the ruined hose with one he pulled from the back of his truck. Tessa had stayed past 3 in the morning, mopping water with old towels and feeding quarters into the working dryers just to warm the room. Officer Ben came back twice, Once with coffee, once with a printout from the hardware store across the street. Security footage. Blurry, grainy, but clear enough. A man in a dark hoodie had slipped into the alley just after 11. He knew exactly where to go, exactly what to damage. And when Ben slowed the footage down, Mara felt her stomach tighten. Dylan. She didn't say his name right away. She didn't need to. Ben saw it too. The hearing that afternoon was held in the old municipal building, in a room with beige walls, folding chairs, and a flag in the corner that had probably stood there longer than half the town. Mara had never spoken in front of people like that before. Not board members, not business owners, not the kind of folks who used words like revitalization and long-term investment while looking straight past the people living in the middle of the damage. Lorraine Voss arrived early, camel coat, perfect hair, a neat stack of papers in front of her. When she spoke, she sounded calm, polished, and certain. She talked about economic growth, about commercial safety, about bringing Belfield into the future. And for a second, Mara understood why people like Lorraine won so often. They knew how to make removal sound like progress. Then it was Mara's turn. She stood up slowly. Her hands were cold, but her voice came out steady. She didn't talk about policy first. She talked about people, about Tessa Reed, who worked nights and used to drive 25 minutes just to wash her kids' school clothes, about the little boy who whispered, asking if the stain on his hoodie would come out before Monday, about the veteran who cleaned his only blanket there, about the mothers, widowers, and tired shift workers who came through those doors not asking for pity, just a fair shot at looking like life had not beaten them all the way down. Then Mara looked at the board and said quietly, "You can call this place old. You can call it broken, but don't call it useless. Not when half this town has leaned on it just to get through the week." The room went still, not dramatically, just honestly. Then Ben stood and handed over the footage. And a few minutes later, when Dylan was brought in and shown the screen, the fight drained right out of him. He admitted Lorraine's assistant had offered him money to help document violations. He said he never meant for it to go that far, said he thought it would just speed things along. That was the thing about selfishness. It always says it didn't mean to hurt anybody. By the end of the meeting, the demolition request was suspended. The board voted to review Bluebird Wash as a protected community service site until legal ownership and zoning could be sorted out. It wasn't a miracle, but it was enough. A beginning. 3 months later, the front windows were clean. 6 washers ran without rattling. There was a shelf by the wall with free detergent, donated books, and a corkboard covered in babysitting ads, job postings, church dinners, and handwritten notes that simply read, "Thank you." And above the change machine, in a plain wooden frame, Mara hung a photo of her father smiling beside a pickup truck, sleeves rolled up, like he'd just finished fixing something with his hands. Some nights when the dryers hummed low and warm, and the whole place smelled like cotton and soap, Mara would stand still for a second and take it all in. Not just the machines, the people, the laughter, the ordinary mercy of a room where nobody had to feel ashamed for needing help. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been written off by people who couldn't see your worth, only to discover that the very thing they dismissed became the place where your life finally began? If this story touched your heart, stay with us for more. Subscribe to the channel and let's keep telling stories about hope, grit, and the quiet kind of courage that